What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Vanguard. Got a great episode for got a great episode for you guys today. Sorry, excuse me. Got good friend of the show, Jordan Chariton, in the house. Super excited to catch up with Jordan. Talk a little bit about some of his recent reporting, plus some pretty insane, unexpected news related to Jank Uygur of TYT, who of course was at one point Mr. Chariton's boss. So that's going to be super exciting to break down as well. Yeah, got a great show for you guys today. Like I said, how you doing, Zach?
Yeah, the what the fucking fuck guard. Jesus Christ, I was not expecting to have to react to this today, but maybe I should have. Shame on me. But yeah, it's going to be a great show today. Happy to have Jordan joining us to chat. Going to get into a little bit of his Amazon reporting as well. So all in all, going to be a great show. But as always, we like to begin and end every podcast with a special shout out to our Patreon community. Those comrades, Vanguardians, Super Vanguardians, that keep the wheels on our van going round and round. Shout out to you guys. Wouldn't be able to do the show without you. Link is in the description, all that shit.
Yeah, huge shout out to the patrons. Thank you guys so much for the support on patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. The link is going to be in the description. As always, if you enjoy our show and want to help us stay afloat, we'd really appreciate the support on Patreon. Like Zach said, we wouldn't be able to do this show without you guys. Our patrons make this program 100% possible. So thank you guys so much. And like I said, the link is in the description if you'd like to help support the Vanguard. But yeah, we do have our special guest waiting here. So without further ado, let's welcome to the Vanguard once again, Mr. Jordan Chariton of Status Quo. How you doing, Jordan?
Hey, fellas, how are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Good to
Yeah, good to see you, Jordan. What have you been up to as far as your Status Quo? How's Status Quo going?
Good. I'm kind of doing double duty because I'm finally writing a book on Flint and my reporting on Flint. So been juggling reporting on the day-to-day stuff Status Quo is known for, with going through a shit ton of my reporting from Flint and trying to distill it into a book. So hopefully I'm about 4 chapters done with this book, and hopefully I'll be able to find a publisher and get it out to the world soon.
That's super exciting. I honestly can't wait to read that. I would love to get like a cover to cover analysis of what all went down in Flint, and I think a lot of other people would as well. So yeah, hopefully, that's all well and good with the publishing companies. I know right now, I was reading about this, just not a quick aside on publishing, but there's been a lot of monopolization in the book publishing, which has basically created basically no room for authentic, like, left-wing reporting. That's why nobody, like, you don't see it at your library, you don't see it at Barnes and Noble, basically because it doesn't exist. There's just these massive corporations that keep a very, narrow spread of these kinds of topics. So if you're able to pierce through that, that would be,
if you
really
if you have a book on Trump or Russia, you'll get published. If you want to write about a city being poisoned, who did it, who covered it up, you probably have to find an independent publisher. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but just writing it's kind of crazy. I mean, I've been there so many times that as I'm kind of going through a lot of my old reporting and also documents I have, I'm kind of stumbling on stuff I missed. Mm-hmm. So like new stuff, and it's really sinister because of the country we're in and the crazy news cycle. It's crazy that it's kind of been lost that this city 8.5 years later still doesn't have clean water. No one's in jail. And there's actually current stuff happening in Flint that's pretty corrupt. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, finishing the book and hopefully getting it out there.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know when that gets finished, or when you're getting closer to finishing it, so we can have you back on and talk a little bit more in depth about that story, because obviously Status Quo has been on top of that from the beginning, doing so much good reporting on the subject. So yeah, thanks for letting us know about that, Jordan. And thank you so much, Mike H, for the $2. Thank you for the first super chat of the live stream. Rick Snyder should be in prison. Yeah, damn straight.
Absolutely. Wait till you read the book. Your head will explode.
See, which is crazy. The one thing, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Jordan, nobody knows this more than you do, but what's crazy about that Flint story is, even when you were just summing it up quickly, like corruption, betrayal, hanging this massive amount of people out to dry in a criminal way, poisoning them to death in some instances, how is that not the number one story in a country that absolutely loves crime podcasts, true crime podcasts? Like, true crime, everything sells. It seems like this is like the biggest true crime, and crickets.
I'll give you like a very quick example. So last year, I published with The Intercept a story. I uncovered that Snyder, the former Republican governor, his top officials deleted their phones right before the launch of the criminal investigation. Kind of a big deal. All their text messages were gone. So I reached out to an editor at NBC News that I know to try and get NBC News to do the story. Corporate, but more eyeballs the better. And she was down for it. She said, "Let me run it up the chain." Every time they say, "Let me run it up to the boss," I know they're going to kill it or not do it. So she ran it up the chain. They said no. She got back to me saying, for the amount of work we'd have to put into it, fact checking and legal, they don't think it would have enough bang for the buck, meaning enough interest, views, clicks, etc. So I said, let me ask you a question. If I came to you or your boss and I said, I have evidence that when Trump was president in 2020, that his head of the CDC, EPA officials, his chief of staff, that they deleted their phones and all the messages for January, February, and March 2020. So like right before COVID became a global thing. And you couldn't know what they knew, when they knew it, anything. You think your boss would cover it? And she said, oh yeah, they'd probably offer you like $10,000 for the piece. So it's just so transparent. I mean, I literally was presenting them with destruction of evidence in a criminal case of a city being poisoned. They didn't care because it's Flint. But if it was reversed and it was about COVID and Trump, certainly they would have ran it. So yeah, it's a sad commentary. Some of the book will address the media because I had a lot of encounters with media twisting themselves into pretzels, explaining why they can't run my story or yada, yada, yada. So it's pretty sad state of affairs, corporate media. And that's why, I appreciate you guys letting me talk about it.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And we're going to get some more into your status quo reporting later, especially as it relates to the Amazon labor. So really excited to get into that too. But we do have one topic that we really wanted to discuss as well. And that involves, as I said, your former boss, actually, Mr. Cenk Uygur over at TYT. If anyone's not familiar, back in the day when TYT was actually good and worth watching, Jordan was head of the investigations aspect of TYT. TYT Investigates. And I used to really, really dig your stuff over there. And around the time you left is kind of when TYT started going downhill, at least if you ask me. But as I said, Jank Uygur, head of TYT, founder of TYT, is getting massive amounts of shit online right now because he admitted to planning on voting for pro-police billionaire real estate tycoon Rick Caruso, who's currently running for mayor of Los Angeles against Karen Bass. Karen Bass, who happens to be endorsed by Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders is actually out there stumping with Karen Bass today. So pretty crazy stuff that Cenk Uygur is coming out against the Bernie Sanders endorsed candidate and is instead endorsing this billionaire Republican who only recently switched his registration to Democrat, basically just in order to run in this race because he knew he couldn't win as a Democrat. So before we get your analysis on Rick Caruso and Cenk Uygur's endorsement of him, let's take a look at where this all started. We reacted to this yesterday, and we've been reacting to and breaking down a lot of the kind of tough on crime, Fox News framing of the issue of crime rhetoric coming out of TYT and specifically from Cenk and Anna. And Cenk put this tweet out yesterday, a real banger. LA is a mess. There's trash all over the roads. Cops don't respond to calls. It's close to anarchy here. Again, it sounds like he lives in fucking Gotham City, as our good friend Olayemi once said. Just this sounds like some Fox News bullshit, obviously. And this guy responds to him. I guess this is an anchor for Fox LA, and asks, "Are you voting for Caruso?" Sounds like you're espousing the same kind of tough on crime rhetoric that Caruso is. And Cenk responded to that by saying, "Yes." Karen Bass's main message seems to be that she is an establishment Democrat, no interest, who thinks things in LA are generally fine. They're not, and will work the system better. The problem is the system. There's nothing but incompetence and corruption here. We need change. And again, there's nothing like necessarily incorrect about that. I don't think Karen Bass is the most amazing progressive candidate ever. She's not a socialist or anything like that. I mean, she's endorsed by Bernie Sanders, but still, she's definitely, not the most amazing, inspired progressive ever. I'll give him that. And if he was putting out the statement saying, yeah, I'm not going to vote for Karen Bass because she's an establishment Democrat, instead I'm going to vote for this Green Party candidate or something like that, then I wouldn't care. In fact, that would be kind of based. Unfortunately, that's not the conclusion he reached. And he's saying, yes, I'm voting for Rick Caruso, who's far to the right of Karen Bass. Like I said, billionaire real estate developer, pro-police to the core, super tough on crime. It would be like, voting for a Mike Bloomberg style candidate. That's the best kind of analogy I could think of. But what was your initial reaction to this, Jordan? I saw you had one of the best responses to this. Was not on my bingo card for Jank to come out as a Republican before Jimmy Dore. It wasn't on my bingo card either. Although, like I said, given all of the tough on crime rhetoric and just insane Fox News framing on these issues, it's not entirely unsurprising, but damn, he really just came out here and fucking said it.
Oh, where do you begin? Good old Jank. Well, I'm not like totally surprised. For your audience to know, by the way, Caruso was a Republican and he just filed as a Democrat in January. So he's basically a Republican, just running as a Democrat. His plan is to put 1,500 more cops in the LAPD. The LAPD budget is already, I think, like $7 or $8 billion, and he wants to add 1,500 more cops. Yeah, I mean, Jank, when I was at the Young Turks, we had some disagreements occasionally in shouting. But the thing that stood out to me is he was never really like that down on capitalism. He is a capitalist. And, in some cases, we could debate that, and some people who are not like burn it down, you could have a healthy debate. But he was pro-capitalist, as news has come out in recent years, not so big on unions, busted a union at the Young Turks. And what's really warped about this and shows you how disconnected he is kind of from like grassroots progressivism. Yeah, we agree on Karen Bass. She's not going to change anything. But literally what you're describing, and by the way, I don't think there's any trash in Jank's community because he's a millionaire. What he's describing, Rick Caruso is in large part responsible. This is an economic problem in cities like LA. Why there's, quote, anarchy is because you have an affordable housing crisis. You have a massive affordable housing crisis that has created mass homelessness in places like LA because people like Rick Caruso, who is a billionaire real estate developer, have bought off the Los Angeles City Council and the mayor. So they are allowed to do whatever they want. He has 2 big malls that he has put in that bulldozed where people lived. His high-rise luxury apartment condos that he has put in have added to the gentrification in Los Angeles that has increased prices. So the very stuff that Jank is talking about, Rick Caruso and his ilk are largely responsible for. And why there is a crime problem, and there's a lot of propaganda out there, but there is not, in cities like LA and a lot of major cities, the murder rate is actually down. The crimes that are increasing are petty crimes, theft, robbery, because people are fucking starving, Jank. The masses are hungry. I just did a reporting tour like 2 months ago. I went through Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. Contrary to the bullshit that comes out of the corporate media, this is not an historic economic recovery. This is historically bad. People are really struggling even before this latest round of inflation. And I don't even think Jank understands that's why there's such a big crime problem, because economically people are really struggling. So if you don't want to support Karen Bass, all right, that's fine. But to then say we need change and the way to get that change is to vote for the Republican real estate billionaire who has bought off the city government, Jank's all about corruption. That is rank corruption. Rick Caruso has purchased politicians. It's just, I don't know. It's completely backwards. It doesn't make any sense. And he had me, he did some other tweets where he was a little bit more aggressive, critical of Bernie and others, which I have been. They have not agitated enough. So good for that. Good for you on that. But to then say the answer is let's vote for the Republican. No.
Yeah, it's kind of a mind fuck, right? Because this is a guy that like he really identifies as a progressive, and that's a big part of the TYT brand. Like they really wanted to be the progressive media. company. But then you look at these tweets and you look at his framing on everything, and I think crime is the perfect way to kind of examine his evolution, if you want to call it that, or maybe just a mask off moment for the guy where he's finally tired of pretending, as I think we're more likely to see come to be, right? I think that he's always just been this NIMBY kind of a guy where he doesn't want to see poverty. He doesn't want to see homelessness. He doesn't want to see, what he deems as trash. He's probably talking about fucking people that are starving to death, for all I can fucking tell about this tweet. You know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't want to have any of that around him. So he would just rather have a tycoon like Rick Caruso, who is going to make it so all of those people are thrown the fucking jail. And, you can't afford it. Get out. It's going to be just me and my rich buddies able to like parade around and gallivant around palm trees, which it's super disgusting, and in a lot of ways, this is exactly what they did to New York City. They made large swaths of New York City become just astronomically unaffordable for anybody, just so that they could, again, just have their little like rich person paradise. And it just seems like he's just making, it sounds like a weak argument, but he just makes Republican talking points. These are people who, again, pro-capitalism, developer, anti-worker, like you're literally coming out against the poor. Like, I would rather have this Republican guy who's going to make like fucking miserable for all these people I've supposedly built a career claiming to have like allyship and empathy for. And instead, I'm just going to show my class solidarity in a way that I've never revealed before, and just say, yeah, I'm with all of the developers and the tycoons. Don't forget, as you mentioned, Jordan, he's a fucking millionaire. I mean, none of us forget the district he ran in. It wasn't a poverty-stricken district in LA when he tried to run for Congress.
Right. Well, I think one of the problems is when you call yourself or your network home of the progressives, you kind of have to actually leave your echo chamber. You have to leave your ivory tower from time to time and go out and speak with real living, breathing, working people. Go interview homeless people. I do often. He doesn't seem to understand that the status quo we have, of course, I mean, the Democratic Party is a large part of that, but the status quo we have, city after city I've been, it's called gentrification. That's a 20-year inflation where rents have been rising for 20 years because of people like, I guess, his endorsed candidate, Rick Caruso. And TYT, obviously a lot of people have turned against it. I have no love for TYT. You're in LA. You could have this whole time been leading the TYT army to protest outside of City Hall for more affordable housing. You want to talk about we need more policing? Do you ever see the LAPD with protesters? They beat them to bloody pulp. And this is what Jank wants, like more cops. He wants to support the candidate who's calling for 1,500 more cops when the LAPD already has, I think it's a $7 or $8 billion budget. So it doesn't seem to me, if you're the home of the progressives, you have to understand the things you're complaining about are because of economic insecurity right now. In cities like LA, petty crime is up because people are desperate. And instead of saying, I don't want the status quo, so let me vote for the billionaire real estate developer. TYT was supposed to be started as kind of like an online lefty activist network too. They had the Wolf Pack, all these things. Why weren't you organizing protests outside of City Hall demanding that the current mayor of LA do something on affordable housing? Rick Caruso and the current mayor have called for more shelter beds. Why do we need more shelter beds? We should be talking about affordable housing. Why is it that in LA, real estate developers literally serve on city council? You don't hear these things on TYT. And most of all, I mean, nationally, he did a follow-up tweet, I think, kind of going after Bernie for calling Biden his best friend and not agitating enough. I'm with you there, but where have you been for the last year and a half? I mean, I was never like a fraud squad person, but I criticized Bernie. I've criticized the squad. He barely has. TYT still technically has some influence. He could have been speaking this way for the last year or two as Bernie kind of folded when Biden backed away from a $15 minimum wage. Bernie didn't agitate against Biden for that. Biden didn't follow through on a public option. Bernie didn't agitate on that. Jank didn't say a word. So it's kind of like he's kind of coming to this late. I'm all for, if you're going to, as the head of TYT, going to become more, confrontational with progressives who aren't doing enough. But if you're then reversing around and talking like a Republican, oh, there's too much crime, there's too much trash, and the answer is give me a billionaire real estate developer, then you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so on point. And also shout out to you, Brian Frederick, for the 4.99. If Jank doesn't like Bass, he can leave his ballot blank. He doesn't need to vote for a billionaire like Caruso. His logic doesn't make sense. Yeah, damn straight. And also thank you once again, Brian, for the 1.99. Anna is more hostile to the unhoused than Jank. Yeah, also some pretty unhinged rhetoric coming out of Anna Kasparian lately, although we have not seen any comment on this specific subject from Anna yet. I haven't seen her, come out in favor of Caruso. I haven't seen her comment on Jake's statement because a lot of people, and we're about to get to this, guys, there's been a lot of reactions, a lot of fellow progressives coming out and roasting the hell out of Jake for this statement, including some former TYT employees. So we're about to get to that, but thank you so much, Brian. And as Dave Weigel here, I think he no longer works at the Washington Post. He used to work at the Washington Post, but he's a pretty good reporter. He said Rick Caruso gets the TYT founder's endorsement. Meanwhile, Bernie's headed to LA tomorrow to campaign for Karen Bass. Again, pointing out that now Cenk is, on the opposite side of Bernie Sanders when it comes to this mayoral election. Cenk responded, Bernie and Bass believe in working within the Democratic Party system. And what has that gotten us? Nearly nothing, just wall-to-wall corruption. Bernie said his friend, Joe Biden, would get us $15 minimum wage and much more. His friend screwed us and he didn't say a word about it, which is true. As you said, Jordan, that's 100% true. But that would be like saying, Bernie's not good enough, therefore I'm going to vote for Mike Bloomberg.
But I don't understand what he's talking about. He's talking about criticizing Bernie for working within the Democratic Party. He created the Justice Democrats. He literally created the Justice Democrats that works within the Democratic Party. Now, obviously, people are on different sides. Some people want a Dem exit. Some people want a Dem enter. I say, go with God, whatever you choose. But Jank, for the last 20 years of the Young Turks, his argument has been, we got to take over the Democratic Party. Now, if he wants to come out now and say, you know what, I've had an evolution. I think it's a lost cause. We need to build a third party or whatever the case may be. That's fine. People are entitled to, change their mind if it seems genuine. But he is now criticizing Bernie for the exact same thing that he says he was going to do. And I remember, if you saw the unhinged videos when Trump won in 2016, he said, we are going to war with the Democratic Party here at TYT. I was excited about it. I was still at TYT at the time. That didn't happen. There was no war between TYT and the Democratic Party. He went on, listen, I think obviously Trump should have been covered. He was president. He was doing and saying a lot of terrible things. But TYT in the Trump years, it was like 90-10 in terms of Trump, the focus on Trump and Trump derangement, and not really focus on Democratic Party corruption, neoliberalism, the fact that the Democratic Party's response to losing to an orange orangutan was to create Russiagate. TYT was barely addressing those things. So I'm all for if Jank wants to be more critical of Bernie now and the squad. They're not gods. They are public servants. They're deserving of criticism and scrutiny. But when you then turn around and say, home of the progressives, rebel headquarters, and we need change, so vote for the billionaire real estate developer, you kind of lose me there. And I hope it's confusing for his audience.
It's wild because,
right.
I was just going to point, and obviously you tweeted about this and made the analogy, about the Jimmy Dore thing. That tweet reads like the kind of thing that Jank would have lambasted Jimmy Dore for tweeting just mere months ago, just absolutely pulled his hair out talking about how this is why the left can't have anything. Are you kidding me? You're going to vote for this Republican, just pretend that it's all right-wing framing. And I would have come out and I would have said, I think it comes out. There's a little bit of correctness in each of these people's arguments. The Democrats are buckling, but let's not go crazy and, parrot a bunch of crime statistics from Republicans, right? And now it just seems like Jank has just on a dime, just pivoted and being like, nope, I'm actually going directly down this path too, and I'm going to do it even more vigorously than you have.
Yeah. I think from what I've observed, and this is just my opinion, I don't have evidence of corruption or anything, but I just think it's human nature. Most people, even if they start out really progressive and working class, when you start developing wealth and once you start kind of swimming in those circles with your wealth, Jank has become a very wealthy man over the last few years. I think he became a millionaire after that investment they got a few years ago. Once you start, and when I was at TYT, he was very, very involved on the business end. He was in meetings nonstop, trying to get sponsorships and partnerships and TV deals and et cetera, et cetera. I feel like, and by the way, we should say he started out as a Republican before he switched to being a progressive. But I think it's kind of human nature. Not all people, but a lot of people, even if they start out, kind of the working man and woman, as they get wealthier, they kind of have that viewpoint. And look at this trash on the street. And these violent homeless criminals. I mean, I could tell you, my last road trip, I went to interview. I went to 2 homeless encampments. I interviewed a homeless woman. Literally everything Anna Kasparian has said about homeless people and crime, yada, yada, yada. Go talk to homeless people if you want to learn the truth about homeless people and violent crime. They're literally being hunted by the police. They're literally being hunted in places like Akron, Ohio, and LA. Sure, there are some homeless people that are violent. By the large number of homeless people are not violent, just want help, are not criminals. So I think that Jank, as he's gotten wealthier, has become more and more out of touch, very disconnected from the grassroots progressive base. I don't fault him for not leading the hashtag fraud squad. I don't fault him for not going in like that Jimmy Dore direction, but I do fault him for, you say you're the home of the progressives, but basically for the last 4 or 5 years, you haven't really held progressives accountable. I mean, he's now criticizing Bernie. I mean, TYT made bank off of Bernie, but now he's kind of evolving to criticizing Bernie. That's fine, but it has to come from a progressive place. On one end, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. On one end, you're rightly criticizing the Democratic Party, the corruption. You're saying Bernie is wrongly working within the system, but you're then turning around and saying the change we need here in LA is going to come from a scumbag. I mean, Let's just call it what it is. It doesn't make any sense. And, I'm not a fan of Jimmy, but you are right that the very things that Jank tweeted, if that were Jimmy a couple months ago, he would have roasted Jimmy.
Damn
and
straight.
Now he's tweeting the same things.
Exactly. And I did want to address these super chats real quick. Thank you so much, MX Row, for the $4.99. Respect Zach's passion and Gavin's buckling down on the issues. Well, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate that. $4.99. Glad you're enjoying the show.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And thank you also, Mike H, for the $2. Poverty is the cause of crime, not a lack of cops. Yeah, damn straight. Fix people's material conditions, and they're not going to be desperate enough to commit crimes of desperation, right? No one wants to be a criminal. No one wants to be breaking into stores to feed themselves or anything like that. So yeah, 100% Mike H.
You have to be dumb as rocks to think the solution in a country with the more cops than any other country is more cops.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you too, Jordan, because, we talked about how TYT has branded themselves as the home of progressives and really embraced Bernie. I think that Zach and I kind of agreed lately, especially that our analysis of that situation is they saw a lane, right? They saw a lane. As we talked about, Jank is an avid capitalist, and he saw a real lane. And, he was smart to do that, go in that direction, become the Bernie Sanders style progressive channel. But do you think that was all just kind of a grift? I mean, I'm sure he believes in some of the ideals of Bernie Sanders' message and maybe other people on TYT to a greater extent. But do you think this was all just kind of his, way to make money?
I think Jank genuinely believes in Medicare for all. I think he believes in the policies that he pushes. I think he wanted Bernie to become president. I don't think he was faking any of that. But at the same time, I think he looked at the views. I think he looked at the money they were making, and let's do more of that. So I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive. I think it was genuine, but he genuinely saw. It's the same thing with you guys, right? Like you do kind of internal food fighting, and Joe Rogan said something, this and that. Like I think you guys genuinely care about that stuff. But at the same time, you see oh shit, we get a ton of views when we talk about Joe Rogan. So it's kind of like his brain saw what was delivering for him. On the flip side, I also think after Bernie lost in 2016, in his mind, he saw there's a lot of money to be made from covering Trump 24/7. And he didn't worry as much about losing some of his hardcore progressive audience who might not want to hear about Trump 24/7. And based on them having watched the Young Turks for years before that, we're expecting, some complimentary coverage of the Democratic Party corruption. I don't think he was worried as much about that because he was chasing the wider audience, which was, the resistance, so to speak. So I think in that case, I think he truly did see Trump as a threat, but he simultaneously saw, oh, if we cover Trump a lot more than Democrats, that's where the views are now. So I don't think he necessarily doesn't believe these things, but I think the content lineup is based around what will get the most views. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah. And also, I just wanted to address this quickly. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Has Jordan seen Anna's tweet about being raped by a homeless person? I think that's behind a lot of the recent rhetoric on her end. Well, just to clarify, because I did see Anna's tweet about that from the other day. I don't think she was actually raped. She said she was sexually assaulted, but she describes the incident here: intentional smear that completely erases the sexual assault I experienced while walking my dog in the neighborhood. While I was bending over to pick up a dog's waist, a man grabbed my hips with both hands and aggressively / repeatedly thrust it against mine. It was degrading and scary. And of course, that's a horrible experience, like no one should have to ever go through that. And of course, everyone deserves to live in a safe environment, a clean environment. Like no one deserves to live in an environment where that could happen to them. But at the same time, I don't think that's quite an excuse to just go full right-wing tough on crime Fox News rhetoric when it comes to the issue of the unhoused. What's your response to that?
Yeah, that's the first time I'm seeing it. I mean, obviously that's terrible. Nobody should deal with that. I feel for her, but at the same time, you have to be clear about your biases too. So obviously, if she had a personal trauma happen from an attack like that, her whole picture might be a little distorted on the homeless, and she might have a certain view overall of the homeless problem in Los Angeles, understandably so, because of what she experienced. So I'm not discounting what she experienced, but you can't, then cast a big umbrella over all of the homeless people and lose sight of why is there such a homeless problem in places like LA? What can we do about it? I think that understandably it might be subconscious because she was victim of something like that. She might then have a certain viewpoint of all homeless people. And you have to be careful not to let what happened to you cloud your judgment in totality. I'm not saying there's not a crime problem in LA. There is more crime happening throughout the country. Again, by the data, murders are down in most cities. Petty crime, economic crimes are up. If you're a progressive network, you should be zeroing in what is behind that economic crime. What is behind why there's more theft and carjackings and all that? The answer is most people are working 2 jobs. The answer is with inflation, even if you're making $15 an hour, it's not $15 an hour. In Los Angeles, you cannot afford to live on $15 an hour. Go ask most people in Los Angeles. So I think that, again, I feel for what happened to her. That's the first time I saw it. But that doesn't kind of absolve, I think, this tough on crime talk overall from me.
Yeah. It also doesn't include the fact that it's important to remember, and obviously, nobody wants to diminish whatever trauma or PTSD or any kind of response that she went through as a result of being a victim of what is a crime for sure. But it's also important to remember that as a byproduct of our society and the massive displacement of homeless people, particularly homeless women, they're far more likely to be victims of sexual assault than housed women. So that's another thing to consider. You're more likely to be a victim of a sexual crime if you displaced or unhoused.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Christina. How long does Jordan think TYT will be solvent? They do a lot of segments via Zoom and not in the studio. That is true. They've kind of almost usually, I feel like they're usually on Zoom now instead of in the studio, which to me kind of kills the vibe that they used to have with the panels. But before we get into some of these reactions from some former TYT hosts and other people in the progressive community, what's your response to that, Jordan?
I mean, generally, whether it's TYT or anyone else, I don't think it's a good sign if a company gets a $20 million investment and then within a year is laying people off. I don't think that's a great sign. They didn't really get a lot of criticism or questioning, like, wait a minute, why are you laying off staff if you just got $20 million? So I don't have any insight on their current financial situation, but I do know, I mean, basically when I left, the on the ground reporting basically stopped. And that is expensive. So I think in part it stopped because I don't think Jank genuinely ever cared that much to do it. I just think he saw that when I was doing it, people were signing up as members and it was going well. I don't think he genuinely in his heart wanted to have investigative reporters everywhere, but it's also maybe they can't afford it. So I don't know. I mean, if Jank and TYT continue on this path of sounding like a slightly edgier CNN, I don't see a huge audience for that. So, they could go belly up in a year from now. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, and let's not forget when they did that fundraising drive to hire more investigative reporters, and then I don't know whatever happened to all that money. I don't know whatever happened to those supposed investigative reporters they were going to hire. But it's not like, as you said, Jordan, it's not like they have any investigative reporting. So who knows where that money went?
Can you imagine for a second if Ben Shapiro launched a fundraising drive and asked for $2 billion, and with the $2 million, we're going to hire whatever. I think he said he did say, get me 10 more Jordan Charitons. And they hire, I won't even get into who they hired, whatever. Not the greatest reporters. And then after they get the $2 million, Ben Shapiro lays off all those people within a year or two. Oh my God, Jank would have went on a fucking crusade.
Yeah, crazy.
And Jank did that pretty quietly and didn't get a lot of attention. So yeah, I would be asking for my money back if I were the viewers.
It's fucking crazy. Thank you so much, Christina. Really appreciate that. Also, thank you, Dan Campbell, for the $20. Jordan has it exactly right and is understandably reacting from a trauma state. Hopefully she will. Easy for me to say, be able to take a step back. I'd hate for her to prejudge accused predators without due process. Yeah, like I said, definitely unfortunate. No one should have to experience anything like that, regardless of your situation. So yeah, hopefully she's able to, come back and be okay from that.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that I still, and I think we'd all agree that doesn't excuse this massively anti-Homelik rhetoric and the constant framing of, the unhoused as criminals and the tough on crime rhetoric. But yeah, I just think you're right that it provides some more context there. And I also hope that she, is able to take a step back.
And I also think, listen, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm a reporter, so I go on the ground. But it's like they're in LA, they have resources. Anna could go out with a producer or two to a homeless encampment and try to talk to people. Maybe, have an open mind, obviously have people with you if you want to, feel safer. You might have your mind changed. That could be an interesting conversation for TYT viewers to see. So like if you're just, again, I feel for her. That sounds awful what happened to her, and nobody should have to deal with that. But if stuff like that, if you're then going to just paint the broad brush on it without maybe going to try and talk with homeless people, you'll learn many of them are mentally ill and don't have the resources for those mental illnesses. Many of them were just evicted recently and are just like you and I and maybe Anna. So, it's human nature. We are our experiences and it forms our opinions. But if you are going to be an on-air personality and you have a big microphone, you just have to be cognizant that you might be making assumptions and painting too broad a brush based on your experience.
And also, let's not forget that there's no correlation between being homeless and committing acts of sexual assault. Some of the most prolific rapists of all time are among the richest and most powerful people in the world. Like, think about the most famous rapist, Harvey Weinstein. A super, super rich guy, Bill Cosby. There's no correlation between poverty or being unhoused and committing these crimes. These are crimes that are rape, sexual assault. It's not a crime of desperation.
And again, if you are the progressive network, you should be telling your audience and understanding that the rise in crime is due to the income inequality.
Right.
It's due to the affordable housing crisis. It's due to the fact that you literally have city council people in America that are real estate developers. That is blatantly corrupt.
And now soon mayor, Rick Caruso, real estate developer. Anyway, thank you so much. Really appreciate this generous super chat, Dan. And we're going to move on real quick, but thank you so much, Christina, for the $4.99. Maybe you guys could interview Kim Brown at Status Quo. She's a great addition. I'm not sure who Kim Brown is. Do you know who Kim Brown is?
Oh yeah, she's
Kim Brown. She hosts Burn It Down with Kim Brown. She hosts now on Status Quo on Wednesdays. She's awesome. Does a lot of stuff, a lot of coverage on the police and kind of police brutality, among other things. Yeah, she's definitely great to come on.
Dope. Yeah, I've definitely seen her on Status Quo. Just didn't know her name.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'd be happy to have her on to chat. I think that's a great idea, Christina. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I guess to wrap it up and put a bow on the Jank thing, unless you want to pull up some more things. Cool.
Yeah, I did want to show a couple reactions off because, like I said, Cenk put out this statement. It is what it is, but he got a lot of pushback from a lot of different people. This was one that I thought was particularly interesting. Mondaire Jones actually came out to scold Cenk. Here we go. In response to Cenk saying that, I hope Karen Bass proves me wrong, but I would be shocked if she changed the status quo even a tiny bit. What did she do in Congress? Approximately nothing. That's what establishment Dems always do. LA desperately needs change. If you think it doesn't change, that's amazing. Which again is fine. Like that's in a vacuum, that's a correct statement. I'm not a big fan of Karen Bass myself. I'd probably vote for her if I lived in LA, but it's not like I would be super excited for her to be the new mayor. I think he's right that she probably won't change the status quo. But to say that a correct answer to that is to embrace a far right wing, pro-police billionaire instead, that's absolutely crazy. That's like saying, Bernie Sanders is too milquetoast, therefore we got to get behind Mike Bloomberg. It makes no sense at all. And in response to that, Mondaire Jones, again, congressman from New York, 14, I want to say. Did he recently lose his?
Yeah, he lost.
No longer going to be in Congress. But yeah, Mondaire Jones from New York, who was a Justice Democrat, if I remember correctly. Again, Justice Democrats being the organization that Cenk himself founded, came out here and says, this isn't fair. Congresswoman Bass fought tooth and nail to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which we did in the House. No small feat, given the anxiety of some moderates, but which stalled in the Senate because of GOP obstruction and Tim Scott's bad faith. So Mondaire Jones coming out here and saying, this is some bullshit, man. This is crazy talk. What was your guys' response to that?
I mean, I don't know the intricacies of what happened behind closed doors. I do know a lot of things passed the House because Nancy Pelosi knows it won't pass the Senate. So she does it as messaging bills, knowing that it has no chance to pass the Senate. Yeah, I mean, Karen Bass, listen, in her heart, I'm sure she doesn't like seeing Black people murdered by police. I'm sure if it were up to her, she'd maybe want a more generous social safety net. I don't see, based on her temperament or record, her willing to fight for any of that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with Mondaire Jones in the fact that it at least she has fought for things. There's only so much power you have as a single congressperson to like overthrow a corrupt system. Where I think Cenk gets it terribly wrong is his tweets keep saying we need change. Well, I question the acumen of your commentary if you think that change is going to come from a billionaire real estate developer. You could say, you know what, I believe in voting, but in this case, I'm not going to vote. I can't bring myself to vote for another Democrat who's not going to do anything. Or you could say, I don't believe in Karen Bass, but I'm going to hold my nose, vote for her, and then we're going to go the TYT Army. I'm going to, put out the bat signal, and we're going to hold Karen Bass's feet to the fire here in LA. We're going to demand affordable housing, and we're not leaving City Hall until she does some things. So I think Mondaire Jones is right. But at the same time, I think Cenk is showing that if his idea of change is now put the billionaire in there, that's kind of like what a lot of people thought about Trump. A lot of Republicans in 2016 said, we need change, and I'm just going to roll the dice on this used car salesman who made a lot of money.
That's what's crazy about this, right? For somebody who dragged relentlessly the people that voted for Donald Trump and like, how could you be swindled by this? How could Jank Uygur, the man who for hours and hours every day talked about like, oh, we've got to take on the billionaire class. We've got to tackle the oligarchy. We need Bernie Sanders to lead our movement, built his entire network's popularity on the back of the Bernie Sanders movement, and then is going to turn around and be like, no, we want the good billionaire to save us. And he's not even a good billionaire. He's a vile billionaire, to borrow Gotham City analogy. He could be a Batman villain for all we know as his side gig, right? I mean, a billionaire fucking weasel real estate tycoon. I don't know. But it's just absolutely absurd because to me, I actually kind of find myself in a vacuum agreeing with Cenk's tweet way more. Like, yeah, you know what? Like, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was really watered down, and it was not what activists were asking for. And you could say, well, that was the best that they could get. But, to Jordan's credit, this was a virtue signal anyway. Why not fucking fight for more? Why not send a message that we're going to put our foot down and we're actually going to bring change about this? Like, I mean, Karen Bass has been a pretty status quo Joe. And I remember even reading preliminary VP speculation that had her name included on the list. It was deep down. She was not going to get picked. But, this is still the kind of framework that her career has been under, where it wouldn't be like unquestionable, like, oh, this progressive stall. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, she's obviously a moderate. Everything that Cenk is critical of her for is pretty much true. Everything that he's being critical of Bernie Sanders right now is pretty much true. It's massively hypocritical given the kind of criticisms he's offered other people who came to this conclusion before him. But it's also just mind-boggling that he takes all of that information and he's like, let's go back to the billionaire. Let's go back to the guy that was one of the chief architects of the massive displacement in LA, the skyrocketing rent prices. Now though, Jank's never really given a shit about rent prices, as I don't know if this is true, but I saw in our chat that apparently he was opposed to what is it called? Rent control in Los Angeles.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So again, pretty crazy that Mondaire Jones felt the need to come out here and push back on what Jank is saying. Let's take a look at another response Jank got here. Let me find it real quick. Once again, Jank saying that he's going to vote for RICK CARUSO, coming out against Karen Bass. He says that, yes, Karen Bass' main message seems to be that she is an establishment Democrat, no interest, who thinks things in LA are generally fine. They're not, and will work the system better. The problem is the system. There is nothing but incompetence and corruption here. We need change. LOL. We need a billionaire to change things. We need a pro-police Republican to change things. Anyway, Emma Vigland, who actually used to work at TYT under Cenk Uygur, says the anti-establishment candidate is the former Republican billionaire real estate tycoon. So many of these problems can be traced back to housing. Caruso will give real estate developers free rein that can only exacerbate the conditions you describe. So again, I think it's pretty telling that even his former employees and people that are definitely part of the same sort of media space as TYT felt the need to come out here and distance themselves from this kind of rhetoric and be like, this is insane, bro. This is fucking batshit crazy.
Yeah, I mean, she's right. And listen, I mean, at the end of the day, it does sound very NIMBY of Jank. I could promise you he does not live in a community that has trash everywhere. It's not an episode of The Walking Dead where Jank lives. So it kind of seems to be like Jank's leaving his gated community, drinking a latte in the morning. And like 15 minutes down the road, he's like, ugh, look at the trash and the homeless people, And that doesn't sound very progressive to me. So, yeah, I mean, it's backwards. There might be a chance he walks it back. But, I mean, the thing that kind of I question is TYT's branding and its marketing. And actually what partially made me excited to join there in 2016 was the TYT Army and the Wolf Pack. And, they were commentators and all that, but they had kind of the activism wing. They held rallies to try and pressure people. And Wolfpack was trying to get constitutional amendments. So why Jank is taking this turn rather than saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm done trying to work within the Democratic establishment. We're going to go to war with the Democrats, and I'm bringing the TYT Army. We're going to be outside Karen Bass's City Hall every day, demanding affordable housing. We're going to be, outside AOC's office and the squad's office, demanding that they actually agitate for a $25 minimum wage. $15 minimum wage is too low. Activate the grassroots. You might even get some viewers back that you lost if you do that. But instead of doing that, he's kind of like in a weird pseudo way, advertising for Republicans. And that is basically what he's been preaching against as long as I've known him.
Yeah, totally crazy. Again, getting a lot of pushback for this. Here's Adam Kindler, who
Andy.
I guess is, Andy Kindler, who I guess is on the Bob's Burgers podcast. He says, I'm unfollowing Cenk Uygur and anyone else looking to weaponize the homeless problem in LA by throwing their support behind a crony capitalist billionaire. Please join me. And Jank says, God bless, brother. I don't begrudge your opinions. Everyone is allowed to disagree and act upon it. Jank's taking so much shit for this. He responded to Mondaire Jones too. That's not fighting tooth and nail. You guys didn't need a single Republican vote. There's a bullshit etiquette in DC, and you're not supposed to fight fellow Democrats, but it was fellow Democrats who killed the bill in the Senate, as well as the rest of your agenda. That actually is 100% true. And he goes on to say, Mondaire, I saw you fight. You were one of the few fighters. Actually, that's kind of bullshit. Mondaire Jones was not really much of a fighter, to be honest. And he says it was fellow Democrats who screwed you over for it. Establishment Democrats killed the George Floyd Act, voting rights, $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, etc. I never saw Bass fighting back against them. And again, that's all true. Basically, Jank's analysis is correct, but the answer to the failures of Democrats is not to embrace Republicans. And I feel like Jank should understand that. Like if I was out here in 2016 saying, Hillary Clinton has so many issues, maybe we should vote for Donald Trump. I think everyone would agree, including on TYT, that that's a terrible idea.
What it sounds to me like he's advocating, without putting it in words, is yeah, we just need to burn down the house. We need to, and the only way to do that is vote for Republicans. And that will show the Democratic Party. Well, I think we've already seen that if Republicans take power, the Democratic Party doesn't then move to the left; they move further to the right. We saw that with Trump. So yeah, I don't understand. And the other thing, none of us live in LA, but if you do live in LA, forever the LAPD is out of control. Jank knows that. Black people, Hispanic people, indigenous people are under siege by the LAPD every day. They have, again, I might be off by $1 billion or $2 billion. I think they have a $7-8 billion budget. And Jank should know that if this guy, Rick Caruso, becomes mayor, he's already saying, I'm going to put 1,500 more police in there. That's going to just make the brutality even worse against the most vulnerable people. So I don't know how you're a progressive, but you're kind of overlooking that. Okay. Okay. So they'll sweep up more homeless people. What do you want them to put them in the Pacific Ocean, Jank? I mean, it's really backwards. I would respect him more if he just said, listen, I don't tell other people what to do, but I'm sitting this one out. I'm not voting for either person because I can't keep voting for the same old Democratic establishment. But to then say, I want change, so I'm voting for him. And again, I don't have any intel, but it would not surprise me at all if behind closed doors, Jank had spoken with Caruso and maybe thought, oh, this is a changed man. And he's not, one of the worst billionaire vultures. Jank
is dumber than even I thought.
Yeah. So it's backwards. And by the way, knowing TYT, their audience was relatively younger when I was there. There was a lot of kind of 16 to 24-year-olds who watch TYT. So I don't know if it's still that way, but these people are new in their political knowledge. They're impressionable. I'm not condescending to them, but they follow Jank's lead and TYT's lead. So I don't like that, potentially younger people just first consuming politics would be exposed to, hey, the Democratic Party is corrupt, so let's stick our middle finger to them and vote for the billionaire. That ain't good.
Right. And yeah, look, here's David Dole also calling him out. Jank pretty much getting called out by the entire spectrum of his supposed allies in progressive media. Pretty funny to watch, to be honest. Just getting absolutely roasted from all sides for this dog shit take. You love to see it, to be honest. But yeah, that probably wraps up our segment on Jank endorsing Republican fascist pro-police billionaire Rick Caruso and the fallout he's experienced since. I guess at least he was brave enough to be honest about who he's voting for, and didn't I mean, he had to know that this pushback was coming, so I guess at least he's not just lying to his audience. But now we know who this guy really truly is.
What the fuck is in the water in Los Angeles right now? I mean, everybody's taken their entire mask off. I mean, I feel like it would be a little impolite to say that Jank's having a Kanye moment given the absolute insanity that's come out of Kanye's mouth, but it does seem like people are just giving away the game now. They're going mask off. They're saying this is my priority and I'm out for me alone. Yeah, wild time.
Yep. Did want to address a couple super chats before we move on to talk a little bit about some recent reporting from Status Quo. Thank you so much, American Wasp, Dieter McBusiness. Really appreciate the $5, man. Great show, guys. I hope I'm wrong, but I think other than Georgia, Democrats are going to lose big Senate races. Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Ohio. Always add 3% to the Republican number. Yeah, man. That is the unfortunate reality of the situation. I do think that probably the Republicans are going to do pretty well in the midterms. Definitely going to win in Florida. The Wisconsin one, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they win Wisconsin. After that brutal debate, I don't think Fetterman is the favorite anymore. Yeah, I don't know as much about Nevada, but Ohio is definitely a coin flip too. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, Nevada polling I've seen is coin toss, and if you add a little bit to the Republican number, and it's been growing. So yeah, I think honestly, I think Arizona and Georgia are going to be the two that the Dems have a chance at holding on to, and other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dieter McBusiness. And also, thank you so much, Zayna Day, Bullhorn Bulletin. Let's go, $10. Really appreciate that. We need to be protesting every rep, not working for the people. Jank is talking from privilege. We should be organizing at our state houses now because legislation getting passed is dangerous, 100%. And that's the message that they should be espousing on TYT, not that voting for Republicans is going to fix the problems of the working class.
100%.
Really appreciate that, Zainab. And also thank you so much, Andrew Matthews, for the $4.99. 1,000,000% sure if Caruso wins the primary, Emma will stay to vote for him. Jank just endorsed him too soon. Didn't the primary already happen? Isn't this the runoff?
This is the runoff. Yeah.
Yeah, because they had a election, and it was close enough that it went to a runoff, if I remember correctly. So now it's between Karen Bass and Caruso. So maybe if Caruso had won the primary, then Emma might have said that, but that's not how elections work in Los Angeles, if I'm correct.
It's a little confusing, I know, Andrew, because there are two technical Democrats in the race, but because of the way that the LA mayor race is structured, it's like what's it called, like a jungle thing where like everybody goes in and then whoever gets the most votes, it's just narrowed down to them. So there's pretty much always in LA going to be two Democrats. It's just one's going to be like, a Republican in disguise, usually like Caruso.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, for the $5. If Hillary was elected, there would never have been a progressive movement. Just saying. If Hillary was, the progressive movement kind of came about in response to Hillary Clinton's run for office in the first place. Like Bernie was running against Hillary. If she was elected, I don't necessarily think that it's not like there's much of a progressive movement anyway. I guess you're saying Bernie wouldn't have run in 2020 if Hillary was the incumbent. Maybe that's true, I guess. But anyway, thank you so much for the super chat, Michael. Do you have any comment on that one?
Oh, yeah. No, shout out to you, Michael. Yeah, obviously it didn't help when Trump was elected either, but no, shout out to you. I really appreciate that perspective. And then Bullhorn Bulletin, Zainab Day, Jank wants in on the Dore right-wing grift. I don't know, actually. I don't know. I don't know if he'll go full on that route. That would be just so antithetical to his brand. There would be so many videos of him just like not at all taking his time doing that pivot. So who knows? But maybe he'll do the Rave Dubin. And
that would, I don't know if you guys are old enough, but that made me sound old. But Hulk Hogan, you remember when Hulk Hogan came out back in the day as a bad guy? And it was like kids were crying, the Hulkster was a bad guy. That would be like the Hulk Hogan turns villain moment if Jank just comes full on Republican.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to start doing the whole like MAGA communism style bullshit. I think that he is, but I do think it's correct to say that like he sees that the progressive momentum behind the Bernie Sanders style politics is dried up, and now he's kind of trying to find a new lane, so to speak, and leaning into some right-wing talking points on certain issues is definitely part of that, just like how Jimmy Dore has absolutely leaned into a lot of right-wing talking points and has been constantly pandering to the right wing, because guess what, that's where the fucking money is on YouTube, motherfuckers. And Jank sees that too, so he's more than happy to chastise other people for grifting, but then he's also in the back of his mind like, I am a capitalist and there's a lot of money to be made out there if I pander to the right wing constantly. So it's probably a mix of that and the fact that he's genuinely just a fucking elitist piece of shit that doesn't want to, see homeless people or whatever. So yeah, thank you for the comment though.
I personally am looking forward to the Jackson Hinkle MAGA communism mayoral run in 2028. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Jimmy's still out here saying, did you hear Jimmy say he might run for fucking president as a Republican? That was pretty funny.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah, anyway, we did want to also talk a little bit about some status quo reporting as it relates to Amazon. Do we want to start with this story about the election, or the one about the one about Kristen Smalls being accused of like starting a fire or something?
Yeah, they're basically connected. So you could start with the
cool.
fire one.
Yeah, so it says here. Yeah, you can go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, basically a warehouse near Albany, New York. So that's upstate New York. They held a union election recently. It was if they won, it would have been the second unionized Amazon. Amazon pulled out all the stops. Like they just escalated the union busting. They flooded the warehouse with all these consultants, which are just union busters that they fly in from out of state to basically harass the workers into voting no. And in this case, there was a fire actually at the warehouse a week before the election. Amazon brought in a worker with a cognitive disability. This clip will explain what happened.
Yeah, let's take a listen here.
About it.
So there's actually 3 now. So we've had 3 in a week. Now, the first one was a person who does identify as a person with disability. And I want to touch on that for a moment because this particular worker does identify as a person with disability. And he was called into a meeting right after the fire, and he was asked if Christian Small set the fire, and this person with disability said no. And then they asked him if the ALU set the fire, and he said no. And then they proceeded to ask him if he set the fire. And of course, he said no. So the fact that they targeted this person with disability and in a vulnerable state to question and interrogate him about the fire, when we know that local authorities were investigating the fire, is a huge problem. So as of today, the first worker I just referred to about the fire is now suspended. Is now suspended. So he had also filed a complaint with the Division of Health and Human Services. And lo and behold, he received a call from Amazon's attorney telling him or asking him to propose a settlement amount. So clearly they know that there is a liability factor. So that's the first person.
Can I just ask you on this person, call me a cynical journalist? Sounds to me like Amazon was bringing in somebody who maybe cognitively has some impairment to rope them into making false charges against somebody like Christian Smalls so that they could say, hey, one of the workers gave up Christian Smalls set the fire.
Or to try to get him to make a statement that could have been misconstrued. So they definitely targeted 3 people that all have, I will say, similar challenges and can be, forced into a vulnerable situation where they may say something that could easily be conveyed as incorrect, or they could have manipulated that statement. So there was a clear malicious intent in all 3 of these cases. So now,
Fucking criminal, man.
Yeah. So basically, this election didn't get a ton of media coverage, but the problem is with companies like Amazon, there are no real labor laws in this country with teeth. Like Amazon could do whatever it wants. It could bring in workers that are disabled, try to manipulate them into making false statements. They then, after this worker would not say Christian Small started the fire, which, by the way, Christian wasn't even in the state of New York the night of the fire. They escorted him out of the building, this worker with a disability, and then suspended him. And basically now that the worker has filed a complaint with the health department, they're now trying to pay him off with a settlement. So this is the kind of crazy shit, evil villain type of shit that Amazon does that the media just ignores. And there's no criminal consequences for it. Like, they could do this stuff. What's the worst that happens? The National Labor Relations Board will issue a fine. Amazon will just pay the fine. It's the same thing the fossil fuel companies do when they poison the water. Oh, we'll be fined. So this is why it's so difficult to unionize, because this warehouse lost the union vote by 200 votes. Workers I spoke with said, honestly, we were so intimidated. All these union busting consultants constantly pulling us away from work, telling us that if we voted yes, if the union passed, there would be layoffs, benefits would be cut. So they felt that if they voted yes, they might get fired. Other workers I spoke with thought, even though it's supposed to be a secret ballot, that they would Amazon would find out they voted yes and they would get fired. So it's really difficult to combat that level of propaganda. These are workers that don't know their labor rights, need the job, working paycheck to paycheck. In the case of Staten Island, where they won, they had a year to organize. This warehouse, after they got the approval to hold the election, they had a month or so. So, there's definitely going to be, I think, right now, to me, in the progressive movement, where the action is, where the hope is in these union drives, workers going on strike, tenants unions, which you guys, I know, have covered Kansas City. So I hope, everybody rallies around workers, even if they lose, an election. You got to learn lessons from the loss, and there needs to be a support network So when Amazon increases the union busting, these workers have kind of a support network around them to correct the misinformation they're being fed.
Yeah, that's truly insanity, man. And as you also reported here, as the union election happened, HR was falsely telling pro-union workers serving as legal observers that they must use their limited unpaid time off hours or vacation time, while Amazon's observers still get paid. My husband is disabled. Well, I need a job, and yeah, that's just total. That's so disgusting. And as you said too, like the most consequence they would face is just a fine. And we all know that if you're a rich corporation and the consequence for a crime is a fine, then it's not a crime for those people. They can do it. So there really is no consequence, and there's no checks and balances to prevent that from happening. So it just continues unfettered.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important. I don't want to go like stop the steal or anything, but like you need legal observers that are like on behalf of the union, because Amazon will try to cheat. I would not put it past Amazon if there's not enough eyes in that voting tent to toss out some ballots that are yes. So what Amazon was doing was illegally telling workers who wanted to serve as legal observers, you have to use your unpaid time off or vacation time. Well, at Amazon, you have limited unpaid time off. If you go in the negative, you face termination. So several workers who were going to serve as legal observers for the union didn't, as this text message shows, because they couldn't afford to go in the negative. And Amazon Labor Union has filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board. They're actually contesting the election. So they've taken the step of contesting it. If you remember in Alabama, Bessemer, Alabama held the first union election. And after they lost, the union that was working with them contested it, and the NLRB actually granted them a new election and ruled that Amazon had illegally done illegal things in the first election. So there is a chance here that they will get a second election, because Amazon did several things that are illegal in the lead up to this election. But at the bottom level, on the ground level, Amazon is basically harassing workers, pushing propaganda that if the union passes, you might lose your jobs. They're literally harassing and manipulating workers with disabilities and then suspending them. I mean, this is really immoral, evil, corporate villain stuff. And it really doesn't get a lot of attention in the media, in large part because Amazon has commercials all over the media. Media networks have sponsorships with Amazon. Popular newsletters are sponsored by Amazon, like Thursday Night Football now is on Amazon Prime. So this is really like your Dr. Evil corporate villain. So it's really important, I think, that, understanding with Starbucks, for example, obviously they've had a historic run, but these are coffee shops have like 20, 30 workers. These are warehouses with 800, 900 workers. So it's a much, much tougher hill to climb to counter that propaganda that our Amazon is pushing to workers, and to kind of create an organizing network that could reach workers to get the union to pass, to get enough yes votes. So I know, Christian Smalls, I think, is a really talented organizer. He's the head of Amazon Labor Union. And I would tell all progressives, because obviously people feel deflated. They rode the Bernie wave twice and maybe counted on the squad to fight harder and, kind of feel like there's no hope. There is hope. I mean, there's been union victories in the last year or two, workers going on strike at really increased levels. So definitely tenants unions. So, if you can get involved, because it's been rejuvenating for me to be able to go out and cover these things. I went up to Albany and covered these workers rally before the union drive. And we just need more attention on this and more solidarity for sure.
Absolutely. And we need more attention on status quo as well. Shout out to you, Jordan, for doing this great reporting and covering these subject matters that might not be the most sexy or clickbaity and definitely ignored by the mainstream media, but you're out here doing this hard work. Tell everyone about how they can support status quo and some of the future work that you might be working on as well.
And actually on that point, my data guy actually did the analysis. YouTube extra suppresses us when we have Amazon in the headline or Julian Assange in the headline. So we've had to like take them out of the headline and just say like Union Buster. It's that bad. But people could support us. Subscribe to Status Coup. Today at 5 o'clock, Ron Placone and Tina Desiree Berg will be hosting. They host on Thursdays for us. So definitely check that out at 5 o'clock today, Eastern. Subscribe. And yeah, if you got $5 a month, support us because we do a lot of on the ground reporting. We'll be on the ground for the midterms. If people know me, I'm on the ground as much as I can be. It's very expensive to do on the ground reporting. We don't have any money from Rick Caruso or other billionaire real estate developers, or any billionaires for that matter. TYT does. So support us if you can. That's statuscoup.com/join.
Hell yeah, everyone make sure to support Status Quo. Go over and subscribe to their channel if you haven't already, and support them in any way you can. Doing such great work, Jordan. And also, speaking of Ron Placone, just before we head out, I wanted to also throw up his response to Jank Uygur's unhinged Fox News talking points about LA being cesspile of anarchy, or whatever he said. LA is not close to anarchy. I almost got a ticket for jaywalking a few months ago, for fuck's sake. I thought that was a pretty funny response as well from Ron, who of course is a great friend of the Vanguard as well.
And a little programming tease. At 5 o'clock, Ron will be commenting on the Cenk Uygur brouhaha. So check it out.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely be watching. Thanks so much for coming on, Jordan. We always appreciate chatting with you. Like I said, doing such great work over at Status Quo. Big fans of your reporting. So important. So thanks for stopping by the Vanguard, man.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Yeah, see you around, dude. And Zach's at work right now, so I'm all alone. Shout out to you, Michael. Thank you so much for the $5. JD was a response to establishment Dems losing. If Hillary, you mean Justice Democrats, was a response to establishment Dems losing. If Hillary won, there would be no squad. Remember Cenk's speech about pirate boarding the ship? I don't remember that specific speech. I mean, I definitely see what you're saying. That being said, it's not like the squad is terribly effective anyway, so who really cares, right? But anyway, thank you so much for the $5, Michael. Really, really appreciate that. And I don't think I missed any other super chats. If you guys have anything else you want to talk about or send in, feel free to do that. I'm going to get out of here in a second. But again, if you want to send in any other questions or comments or anything like that, I will definitely react to them right now. I already answered this one. Thank you so much, Matthew. Yeah, thanks everyone for the super chats today. Really appreciated the conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Jordan. I always appreciate hearing his perspective on all matters TYT related, since the guy used to work there. And if you guys remember back in the day, 2016, 2017 era, TYT was so much better to watch, and in large part thanks to the contribution that Jordan Chariton was making, doing great investigative reporting. So yeah, I do miss those days, and it sucks to see how far TYT has fallen since then. And also shout out to you, Christina. We're definitely going to hit up Kim Brown and get her on the show, because that would be an awesome conversation as well. Also doing great work. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in. And a huge shout out to our patron community. As always, we do like to start and end every single live show with a big old shout out to our patrons. The link's going to be in the description. As always, if you guys enjoy our content, if you enjoy the conversations that we have on the show and the perspective that we espouse, then please consider hitting up that link in the description, guys. Patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. It's a great way to support the work we do. It's a great way to keep the show afloat. It's a great way to make sure that we can keep doing what we do, because it's really tough out there. But really appreciate everyone that is currently supporting the show. Like I said, the link's going to be in the description. As always, patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. Hit it up if you're able to. If not, totally understand. All I ask is that you hit that like button. It's another great way to support the show totally for free. So hit that like button and subscribe. And if you're able to and wanting to, hit up that link in the description and support the show on Patreon. You can get your name up here on the shout out screen. You can get your access to the Discord server, and you can send us monthly questions for our live Q&A, which is actually going to be happening this Sunday. So everyone make sure to mark your calendars for this Sunday afternoon. We're going to be doing our monthly live Q&A. And of course, patrons can send in any question they want of any length, and we will answer it in depth. So that's always a fun time too. Anyway, really appreciate you guys all for tuning in today. It was a great show, and really appreciate it as always. Peace out, you guys. I'll see you later, probably tomorrow.